In a certain kingdom, in a certain land, there lived a Tsar, and in the courtyard of the Tsar was a pillar, and in the pillar 3 rings, 1 gold, 1 silver, and 1 copper. One night the Tsar dreamed that there was a horse tied to the gold ring, that every hair on him was silver, and that the clear moon was on his forehead. In the morning the Tsar rose up and proclaimed that whomsoever could interpret the dream and get the horse for him, he would give his daughter, when she came of age, for she was just 10 years old at the time, and half the kingdom in addition. At the summons of the Tsar, a multitude of princes, boyars, and all kinds of lords assembled. No man could explain the dream, no man would undertake to get the horse. At last someone came to the Tsar and told him that such and such a poor man had a son named Ivan, who could interpret the dream and get the horse. Ivan was summoned. The Tsar asked, "Can you explain my dream and get me the horse?" "Well," answered Ivan, "tell me first what the dream was and which horse it is that you want me to bring you." The Tsar replied, "Last night I dreamed that a horse was tied to the gold ring in my courtyard. Every hair on him was silver, and on his forehead was the clear moon." "That's not a dream," said Ivan. "It's a reality. Last night the 12-headed serpent came here on that horse to try and steal your daughter." "Is it possible to get the horse?" asked the Tsar, who didn't seem to be too worried about his daughter. "Yes, it is," said Ivan, "but only when my 15th year has passed." Ivan was then just 12 years old. The Tsar took him into the court and gave him the best of everything until his 15th birthday came. Then Ivan said to the Tsar, "Now give me a horse on which I can ride to the place where the serpent dwells." The Tsar led him to his stables and showed him all the horses, but he could not find a single one to suit, by reason of his strength and weight. When he placed his hero's hand on any horse, that horse fell to the ground. So then he said to the Tsar, "Let me go out into the open country to seek a horse of sufficient strength." The Tsar let him go. Ivan the peasant's son looked for 3 years, but nowhere could he find a suitable horse. He was returning to the Tsar in tears when an old man met him on the road, who asked, "Why do you weep, young man?" To that question Ivan answered rudely and made to chase the old man away. The old man said, "Watch your tongue, young fellow, do not speak ill to strangers," and he walked off. Ivan reflected on his own rudeness and said to himself, "Why have I offended that old man? Old people know so much." He turned and ran to catch up with the old man, fell down before him and said, "Dedushka, forgive me. I spoke hastily, prompted by grief and frustration. This is what I'm crying about. 3 years I have travelled to the open countryside, and nowhere can I find a horse to suit me." The old man sucked his beard and then said, "Go to such and such a village. There in the stable of a poor peasant is a mare. The mare has a mangy colt. Take the colt and feed him, and he will grow strong enough for you." Ivan bowed to the old man and, taking his advice, went to the village he had mentioned, went straight to the peasant's stable, saw the mare with the mangy colt, and put his hands on its back. The colt did not flinch. Ivan bought him from the peasant, fed him up, and then went to the Tsar, saying he had found a horse. "How many men do you need, Ivan?" asked the Tsar, as preparations were being made to visit the serpent. "I need no men," replied Ivan. "I can get the horse alone, but you might send perhaps half a dozen for company." The Tsar gave him 6 men, who made ready and set out. Whether they travelled for a long time or a short time, I cannot tell you, but what I can tell you is this. They came to a fiery river. Over the river was a bridge, and near the river was an enormous forest. In that forest they pitched their tent, unpacked their saddlebags, and began to eat, drink, and make merry. Ivan the peasant's son said to his comrades, Let us stand guard every night in turn and see if any man passes the river. Each time Ivan's comrades took their turn on guard duty, however, they got drunk in the evening and so saw nothing. At last, it was Ivan's turn to stand guard, and just at midnight, he saw a three-headed serpent crossing the river. The serpent called out, "I have no enemy, no calumniator, save one." This is how snakes speak, you see. "Ivan, the peasant's son, and the raven has yet to bring his bones in a bladder." Ivan, the peasant's son, sprang from under the bridge. "Well, here I am, flesh and bone together." "So," replied the serpent on horseback, "if you are here, then let us make trial." And he advanced on Ivan. But Ivan went forth on foot. He gave a blow with his sabre and cut off the three heads of the serpent. Then he took the horse for himself and tied it to the tent. The next night, Ivan the peasant's son killed the six-headed serpent, and on the third he killed the nine-headed serpent. He threw them all into the fiery river. On the fourth night, the 12-headed serpent came and began to speak wrathfully. "Why, who are you, Ivan the peasant's son? Come out this instant and face me. You have killed my sons. Tell me why." Ivan the peasant's son slipped out and said, "Oh, let me first go to my tent, and then I will fight with you." "Well, go on then, but hurry up." Ivan ran to his comrades. "Here, boys, here's a bowl. Look into it. When it is filled with blood, come to my aid." He returned and faced the serpent. They rushed and struck each other. Ivan, at the first blow, cut 4 heads off the serpent, but went himself to his knees into the earth. When they met the second time, Ivan cut off 3 heads and sank himself to his waist in the earth. The third time they met, he cut off 3 more heads and sank to his breast in the earth. At last, he cut off the 11th head and sank in the earth up to his neck. It was only at this point that his comrades thought of him. When they looked at the bowl, they saw that the blood was running over the edge. They hastened out, cut off the last head of the serpent, and pulled Ivan out of the earth. Ivan took the serpent's horse and led it to the tent. Night passed. Morning came, and the good youth began to eat, drink, and be merry. Ivan the peasant's son rose up from the merrymaking and said to his comrades, "Wait here." He turned into a cat and went along the bridge over the fiery river to the house where the serpents used to live, and began to make friends with the cats there. In the house there remained only the old mother of the serpents and her 3 daughters-in-law, who were sitting in the chamber talking. "How can we destroy that scoundrel, that Ivan the peasant's son, who has murdered our manfolk?" The youngest daughter-in-law said, "I will bring hunger on the road and turn myself into an apple tree, so when he eats an apple, it will tear him to pieces in a moment." The second daughter-in-law said, "I will bring thirst on the road and turn myself into a well. Let him try to drink." The eldest said, "I will bring sleep and make a bed of myself. Let Ivan try to lie down. He will meet his death in an instant." At last, the old woman said, "And I will open my mouth from earth to sky and swallow them all." Hearing what they said, Ivan went out of the chamber, turned back into a man, and returned to his comrades. "Now, boys," he said, "make ready for the road." They made ready and set out. First of all, a terrible hunger overcame them on the road, and they had nothing to eat. Then they saw an apple tree. Ivan's comrades wanted to pluck the apples, but Ivan would not let them. "That is not an apple tree," he said, and began to slash at it. Blood came pouring out. A little further along, a raging thirst overcame them, and they had nothing to drink. They spotted a well, but Ivan would not let them drink from it. He began to slash at it, and blood came forth. Then sleep started to overcome them. Suddenly they saw a big feather bed on the road. Ivan cut it to pieces and the blood streamed into the ditch. Finally, they came to the jaws stretching from the earth to the sky. What was to be done? They thought of jumping through them at a run, but no man was able to jump through save Ivan, and he was borne out of trouble by his wonderful steed, every hair of which was now silver, and which had the bright moon on its forehead. By and by, Ivan came to a river, and by that river was a hut. There he was met by a little man, himself 1 finger tall, and his moustache 7 versts in length, who said, "Give me the horse. If you won't give it willingly, then I shall take it by force." Ivan answered, "Hold your tongue, you ridiculous little man, or I will crush you under the horse." The little man, himself 1 finger tall, and his moustache 7 versts in length, knocked Ivan to the ground, jumped onto the horse, and rode away. Ivan went into the hut and grieved greatly for his horse. In the hut on the stove was lying a footless, handless man, who said to Ivan, "Listen, good hero, I don't know who you are to call you by name. Why did you try to fight with him? I was something more of a hero than you, and still he gnawed off my hands and feet." "Why?" "Because I ate bread from his table." Ivan began to ask how he could win his horse back. The footless, handless man said, "Go to such and such a river, and there work the ferry. Ferry passengers back and forth for 3 years, taking money from no man. Then perhaps you will be able to win back the horse." Ivan bowed down to him, went to the river, found the ferry, and ferried passengers back and forth for 3 whole years, taking money from no man. One day, 3 old men asked to be ferried across. They offered Ivan money, and he would not take it. "Tell me, good hero, why do you take no money?" "To keep a promise," replied Ivan. "What promise?" "A malicious man took my horse, and a good man told me to work the ferry for 3 years, taking money from no man." The old men said, "If you wish, Ivan, we're ready to help you get back your horse." "Gladly, friends, please help me." Now these 3 old men were not common people. They were the freezer, the devourer, and the wizard. The wizard went out onto the shore, drew a picture of a boat in the sand, and said, "Well, brothers, you see this boat?" "We see it." "Sit in it." And all 4 of them sat in the boat. The wizard said, "Now, light little boat, do me a service as you have done before." Straight away the boat rose in the air, and in a flash, just like an arrow sent from a bow, it brought them to a great stony mountain. On that mountain stood a house, and in that house lived the little man, himself 1 finger tall, and his moustache 7 versts in length. The old men sent Ivan to ask for the horse. Ivan began to ask. The little man said, "Steal the Tsar's daughter and bring her to me, then I will give you the horse." Ivan told this to his comrades. They left him at once and went to the Tsar. The Tsar knew what they had come for and commanded his servants to heat the Turkish bath red hot. "Let them suffocate there," said he. Then he invited his guests to the bath. They thanked him and went in. The wizard commanded the freezer to go first. The freezer went into the bath and made it cool. Then they washed and steamed themselves and came back to the Tsar. He ordered a great dinner to be given and a multitude of all kinds of food to be laid on the table. The devourer began and ate everything. In the night they came together, stole the Tsar's daughter, and brought her to the little man, himself 1 finger tall, and his moustache 7 versts in length. They gave him the Tsar's daughter, and he gave him the horse in exchange. Ivan bowed down to the old man, sat on the horse, and set out on his way back to the Tsar. He travelled and travelled. On the way, he stopped in an open field to rest, put up his tent, and lay down. When he woke up and threw out his hand, the Tsar's daughter was there by him. He was delighted and asked, "How did you get here?" "I turned into a pin," she replied, "and I stuck myself in your collar." That moment she turned into a pin again. Ivan stuck her into his collar and travelled on until he reached the Tsar. The Tsar saw the wondrous horse, received the good hero with honour, and told him how his daughter had been stolen. "Do not grieve," said Ivan, "I have brought her back." He drew the pin from his collar, and in an instant there stood the Tsaryevna, the fairest of maidens. The Tsar was overjoyed. He took the horse for himself and gave his daughter to Ivan. Luckily, the fair Tsaryevna had already decided to give herself to Ivan, so that was all right. They married, and they lived a long, happy, and enchanted life together.